Esports Scholarships. It's a phrase we hear a lot more often nowadays because more and more schools are starting up esports programs and looking to recruit talent. But just how do you get an esports scholarship? It turns out not a lot of people know. For one, there aren't a lot of schools providing them. A few dozen out of over 4,000 public and private universities in the country. Scholarships can also be complicated with different types, rules, and applications. And lastly, all of that is made worse by the fact that it's extremely hard to find info about university esports programs online. Most of these departments are new or have changed dramatically in the last year or just don't have very good websites. Take Columbia College. We wandered into their athletics website but couldn't find anything about esports scholarships specifically. Then we found a mention on their esports Twitter account, which sent me right back to the athletics website. There's no info here though, so I follow this financial aid tab that sends me over to their separate academic website, and then I dig through to the scholarship section, fake fill out all this undergrad info, and then go through all of these options. There's no mention of esports, but maybe it counts under athletic scholarships, but who really knows? The information stops here. So back to the athletics site, to the directory, where I emailed all the esports humans listed there, asking for any information on the program. I waited a week, and never heard back. Let's try again with RMU, one of the oldest and most well-known esports programs. The website also has no information on scholarships. I did eventually find this picture on their website that says they offer up to 50% tuition, but it's embedded in a news article from 2014. I also found this Recruit Me button, which links me to a questionnaire if I'm interested in esports, and also a different questionnaire if I'm also interested in esports. And then in the second questionnaire is a strange Google Doc link, and in there it says yes, there are scholarships. But you have to be accepted to the school to be considered, and no other information is available. After going through tons of schools, we've got a lot more stories just like that. And it turns out finding info on scholarships is really hard. So we brought in a little help.
My name's Chad Smeltz. I'm the Esports Program Director for Harrisburg University, and I'm going to be telling you a little bit more about scholarships for esports.
Chad is going to be our human FAQ page about the different types of esports scholarships, some tips for applying, and the major things you should know about scholarship programs before you commit. Let's get started.
An esports scholarship is for somebody who's interested in going to school and learning about their program of choice, but then also playing esports afterwards. So it would be sort of similar to a traditional sports scholarship where a player would go to classes, study their major, and then afterwards they would have a practice that they go to, and they're responsible for going for so many hours and playing an esport title of their choice or a game for the university.
In other words, there are schools that will give you tuition money for playing on their esports team while you get a degree. There are three major types of scholarships. The most common is a partial one that'll pay for only a part of your tuition, usually a set percentage each year from 5% to maybe 75%. Then there's full tuition, which will pay for all 4 years of tuition but no other expenses. And the last big one is full ride. That means you're covered for your 4 years of tuition, but also expenses associated with the college, like textbooks, materials, and sometimes even rent and food. You can also classify scholarships by their requirements. Some have no strings attached, and others are academic-based. In esports, it usually comes down to two big things.
So some of the requirements for an esports scholarship, specifically for the academic ones, is that you're expected to maintain a certain GPA. It's not like you have to maintain like a 3.8 GPA or anything like that. It's just to make sure that you're taking your studies seriously. And then another unique thing with esports is making sure that your attitude in the game is not toxic. And what I mean by that is look, we play games. The people that are giving out the scholarships understand games very well. So we know what to look for when people are toxic or have super negative attitudes. You know what I mean? Like, we don't want people that are notorious or famous for being negative teammates. So that actually comes into the scholarship. We take that into consideration.
Now that you know the general kinds of scholarships, it's time to find some schools that offer them. A school counselor might be of help, but you can also check the National Association of Collegiate Esports directory. They're recognized as the governing body for collegiate esports by both the NJCAA and the NAIA. And in January of last year, 94% of US schools with varsity esports were members of the NACE. There's also a few non-members like these guys. While most of these schools don't have public information, they usually have forms for recruitment, which will start the application process. The application process for any school with an esports scholarship is usually coupled with a tryout for the esports team, which may need to happen either before or after you've been accepted to the school. If you're not sure what the process is and for some reason you don't find it on the website, find a contact in the athletic department and ask directly. Once you get to the actual application itself, you'll be asked for general info like your name, age, GPA, preferred role, in-game name, and sometimes even your average KDA. It's all pretty basic, but here are some common mistakes to avoid.
I want to make sure you talk about what title you're in. It sounds basic, but some people will just forget to tell me what title they're interested in, what their rank is, what their username is, and make sure everything is, you test out all the information yourself to make sure it actually comes up. Because a lot of the times I'll look at something and it won't be, I'm not able to find it, or the link's broken, or they didn't give me the right name, or something as silly as some people will actually change their name after they sent the scholarship in. And you could be the most qualified person in the world, but if I can't find you, then I don't have any way of understanding that.
You might also be asked for VODs of your gameplay. And according to Chad, this is where you really need to shine, but more in your communication than your gameplay.
One of the reasons that a lot of schools will ask for VODs or, like video on demand of your gameplay is they want to see your personality. They want to see your thought process. They want to know how you look at the game. If you want to stand out, talk about the game the way you see it, the way that your team needs to do something, or the way that you need to play differently, or all of the things that are going into making the game go well. Coaches, managers, they want to see that difference because honestly, there are a lot of people that are good in the game. So you have to differentiate yourself in a way that kind of makes you stand out. So talk about all the different facets and try doing it in the game. Because when you're playing these things and you're playing these esports live, you have to make those decisions in real time. So if you can show me that you're able to do that, then that's a huge benefit when you're applying to an esports scholarship. Even if they don't ask for those videos, provide them. Doing so shows that you're proving you have an initiative, and then on top of that, it gives you the ability to show that you're different from the rest of the group.
What comes after all this submitting? If the school finds you a fit, you'll be contacted for interviews and tryouts, the latter of which usually happen online, with coaches watching you play games with other recruits and listening to your team comms on Discord. If you want to know more about the tryout process and the team practice stuff, you can check out the College Esports Q&A video in the description. So now that we understand a little better the types of scholarships and how to stand out on your application, let's talk about some things you should keep an eye out for. One area Chad sees students struggle with the most are the nitty-gritty of scholarship rules. With a lot of year-to-year partial scholarships, you should know if it's possible to lose your tuition aid if you don't do well on the team, or if they want to replace you with a different player. You should also keep in mind your overall costs.
One of the important things when it comes to percentage scholarships is looking at what that percentage is of the total cost. So if you have something that looks really attractive, like a 75% scholarship, make sure you understand what 75% is of the total number. If it's 75% of a school that costs $10,000 a year and you only have to spend $2,500 a year or something like that, then that's really, really good. But if it's 75% of a school that costs $50,000, then you're kind of going to be responsible for a lot of money. And it's important to realize what the difference in that is. Don't always look at percentages, always look at the total number.
At the end of the day, do as much digging as you can by talking to people directly.
I can tell you a lot about scholarships, but when it comes down to it, do your homework. It's really important, regardless of what university you're looking at, to make sure everything on the scholarship lines up with what you think it is. Any program director, anybody who's letting you know about these scholarships can give you this information. Always double check it and make sure. You can talk to other students about it. You can talk to people who are already involved in the program. If it's a brand new program, feel free to ask around to other people. Make sure everything's authentic. It's super important because this is brand new stuff. So while it's super exciting, there are also ways that it can kind of be confusing too. So just make sure to always do your homework.
And last but not least, we let Chad talk about Harrisburg.
So if you're curious more about Harrisburg, you don't have to, but if you're interested about esports in Harrisburg specifically, you can reach out to myself or Jeff Wang. He'll be the head coach doing a lot of the tryouts for us in the next month or two. And you can also go to Harrisburg University's website where you can check out where they have an esports tab to learn some more information.
For more league interviews and analysis, subscribe to our channel. You can also find stats, discussions, and more on our website and mobile app at blitzesports.com.